Productively as a teacher on social media? What do our students risk losing when they lean into AI tools and strategies? And what can be gained by bringing student writing to authentic audiences? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube most Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is David Cutler. David is a dad, husband, and writer. He's also a veteran U.S. history, government, and journalism teacher who is exploring AI in education with caution. You can connect with David on LinkedIn, on X at SpinEDU, on Instagram at Teacher Cutler, on Medium at Spin Cutler, and on his website, dcutler.pressfolios.com. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today, my friend. Are you ready to light it up?
I am, and thank you so much for having me on.
What a pleasure it is. You and I have connected over on our beloved Medium for some time, and I've enjoyed your pieces, some of your perspectives on the AI conversation. And before we go much further, I have to say it's been fun as a podcaster in this space to sort of hear voices from different places on the AI and education spectrum. And so you're bringing your perspectives as a practitioner. I especially appreciate that. And let's jump into it right away this morning. In August, you published ChatGPT 5 just changed my mind. Generative AI has no place in my classroom. Let me know, 6 months later, how do you think about AI tools for students in today's schools?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a great question. And I'll start off by saying I recently wrote a piece for Edutopia saying that I now regret that headline. I don't really believe in absolutes. I think that if teachers choose to use AI in any way, shape, or form, it should be used deliberately and cautiously. But having said that, ChatGPT 5 and iterations since then, they do really scare me because I think that they take a lot of the good challenge in learning away from students. So in other words, cognitive offloading. I know that that's a term that's been in the media quite frequently. And I really want my students to engage in healthy struggle.
More recently, and on that note, you wrote another piece called Don't Let AI Climb the Hill for Our Kids. Anti-fragility, struggle, and what young people lose when help comes too early. So is AI, do you think, making our learners less resilient?
I think so. I mean, at least as far as what I've seen as a teacher, I think if something can do something for you, and especially if you're young and not yet skilled in whatever practice it is you're expected to master, I think there's a great risk in allowing that tool, in this case AI, to do it for you. I will also say this, I don't blame students. I think a lot of what is being targeted at them is really it's savvy marketing that is feeding into their social networks, telling them literally, don't do work over the weekend. Put your prompt into our spinner and we'll feed out your essay right now and then. I mean, it's really low-lying fruit. And I tell my students, it must be really hard not to engage with that, to say no. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for students if I'm showing some empathy. And I often talk to students about that. But yeah, I mean, I try every day to limit the amount of technology in my history classroom that students use. And it's not easy. And it's not easy, I think, for any classroom. It's so challenging. And, it's not just my practice, I think. I think my practice is informed by a lot of what Jonathan Haidt has said in his recent books, especially The Anxious Generation. I've been influenced by academic studies, this book by Dr. Horvath, The Digital Delusion, which is one of the most impressive and I think enlightening books I've read in years about why we as educators should limit use of not just AI, but really all technologies.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep an open mind, as I said, and I actually just picked up that
Yeah,
book, Digital Delusion, this week. It was a Kindle. I think I got a good price on Kindle, let's put it that
yeah,
way. And so I've added it to the growing list. We'll see if I can get to it at some point this year.
yeah,
But hey, let me drill down before we continue. Let me drill down
sure.
because as a practitioner, I'm really interested in the distinctions here. I think a lot of teachers on the surface, or even the general public, understands that ChatGPT and Gemini and the like can replicate or can manufacture large bodies of text so they can fake papers, so to speak. But
Yeah.
many educators will say that AI tools are fantastic brainstorming supports as well. So if a student is stuck for topics for a paper or a study or an inquiry, they can go to these tools and generate a list of 10. So those are some of the supports, shall we call them, that these AI tools perform. But I wonder, I still fear
Yeah.
that these tools are actually taking the place of some good cognitive work on the part of students. Is that kind of where you are as well?
Yeah. So let me say this, and I should say this is not my thought. I am summarizing this from Dr. Horvath, who wrote The Digital Delusion. So I don't want to get credit for thinking that's not my own, but I fully support it. So here it is. You ready? So even when students appear engaged with digital tools and they seem to be helpful to them, the learners, right? What they learn in my experience and what Dr. Horvath also establishes in his research, what they learn tends to be slower, shallower, and less durable compared to more traditional methods. And by that, with brainstorming, I'm not saying that they can't go on to AI, but I mean, actually go to a library, look at a catalog. He also talks a lot about, Dr. Horvath, how handwriting and print reading are linked to stronger retention. And I think if students just put down their laptops for just a little while and actually went into a library or even a bookstore and actually used their hands to find books and flip through books, it would open a whole new world for them. I'm not saying they don't do that, but I'm not seeing it enough in my day-to-day practice, if that makes sense.
For sure. That's entirely fair. And I am with you
Yeah,
on the bookstores and libraries. My heart is there too. I do worry that this generation just has no time for
yeah,
those places, but we've got to try to
yeah,
preserve them as long as we can. You've used AI tools, I understand, to speed up grading, yet you
yeah,
argue that generative AI has no place in student writing. So some
yeah,
would call those conflicting positions. Do you see that?
yeah. Yeah. Again, I think before I answer your question, I think in
Sure.
certain situations where the teacher is giving guidance on how to use AI in a very narrow way, I think it could be okay for helping students cement certain facets of critical thinking, including
Sure.
writing. But to
Sure.
answer your question more broadly about why I use or sometimes I use AI to help grade, I've already mastered grading,
Okay.
right? I mean, one can always become a better master at whatever it is they're
True.
doing, but students are just starting out. So
Yes.
my goal, as at least as I see it as an educator, is to get them quality feedback as soon as I can, so that they have more time to respond to that feedback, including not just in writing, via email asking me questions and things like that, but also face to face. I will say this though, when I do use AI, I use it very sparingly. I use it mostly now as a gut check to see if the system, and I prefer CodeGrader. I like CodeGrader, but and also Flint AI is great as well, to see if I'm in line. I don't want my biases, even if they're unconscious, to impact my grading. So really, that's how I use it now, as a gut check. And even then, of course, I realize that I'm the ultimate decision maker, right? I'm the one who decides. AI is fallible. I'm fallible, but it's always reassuring to see if the system more or less agrees with me. every now and then, if I can't think of a specific comment that I want to write that would resonate with a student, that would make sense to them, sometimes I do ask Flint AI, and my school has a subscription to Flint AI. How can I make this palatable, right, to a junior or a senior? But whenever I do that and I leave that comment in the margins, I say, this was produced by AI in consultation with me, so the student knows. So I think transparency is really, really important. I mean, I've always been a fast grader because I think that it's really important for students to get their work within a reasonable amount of time so that they continue to care about it and that they can also revise it while the information is still fresh. So for me, yeah, I mean, I like CoGrader quite a lot. I think it does a great job of giving me that, as I said, that gut check that I sometimes want.
It's a second set of eyes, right? And as
Yes.
a teacher, that is so helpful. It's almost like having someone there beside you, like a grad student, sort of offering their suggestions and their reviews. But as you said,
Yeah.
we're always signing off. We're always looking at what we are signing on to in terms of feedback for students and learners. And I think there's
Yeah.
no shortcutting that. There's not going to be a time when we just push out feedback blindly. That's going to be a big red flag.
No,
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, that is it exactly. If you do use AI for feedback, you can't just use it blindly. That's a big no-no, and that's highly unethical for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, if it is used in report card comments, in summative reviews, it's got to be acknowledged. I don't think we would appreciate it's fair in that context, I think, to sort of think about how we would receive that kind of feedback, professional evaluation and so forth. Disclose that it's used by AI or AI contributed, I think, and that's fair. In 2026, I think people understand that. Thank you for joining us, educators. If you're finding value here, make sure to give the video a like on whatever platform you are joining us on. Congratulations, David, pivoting a little bit and shifting direction slightly. Congratulations on your latest Edutopia post, how to engage productively on social media as a teacher. How would you summarize your main message here to educators?
Yeah, my main message would be to limit your time on social media.
Okay.
And do whatever you need to do to limit your time on the platforms. One of the best books I've read recently was by Dr. Rose Stockwell. And it was so enlightening to me to learn about not just how the X works or Twitter or Facebook, how those algorithms work, but how they're really made to be addicting, right? I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And for me as a teacher, I'm always doing my best to try to model behavior that I'd like my students to emulate themselves. And so if I tell my students to put away their phones or, to put them out of sight, I also want to do that, right? And they can see that visually, that my phone's not with me. But I also want them to know, and we talk about this sometimes as well, that's, it's difficult sometimes if your phone's not with you, that still you're thinking about, what am I missing, right? Or what alerts are coming in. And so I've been a lot more cognizant recently of my own use of social media. And I've used, and I've spoken to students about this, screen blockers. Opal is a great screen blocker that I use right now. There's a free version, which I think is absolutely terrific, which blocks out really any app, but I block out my social media apps. And so when I do engage on social media, it's not just me mindlessly scrolling down the feeds, right? Going into this endless loop of, just infinity, but that I'm meaningful with my posts. And then I sign off, or I can't sign on because it's blocked in the first place. And so I've actually spoken to my students about this addictive quality of social media. And I guess the big ones now seem still to be TikTok and Instagram. And I am encouraging my students to download a screen blocker. You don't need to buy the paid version. I think the free versions work really great. But I think if they see that I'm doing that, and I also have that struggle as a 42-year-old going down that social media rabbit hole, and I'm trying to do something about it, my hope is that at least some of them will follow suit.
I want to push you a little bit on this point because,
Yeah,
and I don't disagree with everything you said there, but if we
yeah,
follow that line of thinking far enough, then we might end up at, well, maybe we should just delete all of our apps entirely if that's the
yeah,
ideal. And so there's a hint in your title about engaging productively, which suggests
yeah,
there are productive uses. Can you talk a
yeah.
little bit about what you think that looks like as a professional, based on or keeping in mind how the algorithms do work in 2026?
Sure. So, for instance, like you and I connected via Medium, right,
Yes.
online.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a really important thing that we could have just as easily connected through LinkedIn or Facebook
Right.
or X or whatever it's called now. A lot of the connections I've made throughout my not just teaching career but writing career has been via social media, right? Like I read your book. Can I interview you to inform my opinion, to inform my own experiences? I think that's really productive. That's a really effective use of social media. But that doesn't mean that I have to stay on social media for 3 hours and wait
Right.
until that person replies, right? I can
Right.
I can log off, or whenever my screen blocker is no longer running, then I can check again. I think that's really productive. I think, look, there is some utility in social media and connecting with old friends or old acquaintances that you haven't seen in a long while, and you don't know where they are or what they're up to. I think it can be a great tool, but like with most things, it needs to be, I think it has to be for our own health and sanity, in moderation.
Yeah.
And if it's not in moderation, it stands a good chance of becoming, if not addictive, maybe that's too strong of a word, too present in our lives, right? I want to
Sure.
look in people's eyes more than I'm looking at a screen. And I'll be honest with you, I still struggle. I'm still struggling with that. Um, Not just social media, just any screen. But I don't want that to be the case for me anymore. And I'm trying to make a change. I'm trying to share that change too with my
Mm-hmm.
students.
Sounds good. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
I agree. What I hear is contribute positively and then engage with intention. One of my favorite pieces of advice on this topic
yeah,
too is to try to create a teacher-only account. I'm not sure if you have,
yeah,
and not everyone has the interest or the bandwidth to take this on, but if you do create a teachers only account. So for example, Teachers on Fire, I try to follow only educators, and that's going to change your feed as well. So you'll keep out a lot of the political noise and all of the other distractions that you're not really interested in. David, you run
yeah.
a student-led newsroom and teach kids to identify fake news, which I think is great. What are the keys to building strong media literacy skills in our students today? I know that's a huge question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Let me just start off by saying that this is actually a great question because we're just finishing up the celebration of Student Press Freedom Week. So this is actually right in my wheelhouse. I love nothing more. I love all that I do. I love teaching U.S. history, government, Latin American history. I love nothing more than advising student journalism. And the reason why is because it caters so well to allowing students to show agency in their own learning. And that also comes across when they spot, I won't say the whole thing, BS, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you learn how to create news, if you learn how news is produced, what goes into the news gathering process, it's easier, at least from what I've seen, for students to note or notice when something seems fishy, right? They have a better BS smell detector, so to speak. And so I love that. I think that's great. The students that I work with in the Gator, and a shout out to the Gator if I can, bmgator.org. It's one of the most award-winning newspapers in the country. It's a delight to work with these students. They are just phenomenal, really just incredible learners. And one of the things that really excites me also is going to these conventions where I see student journalists talk about how they produce news, and they're talking about AI deepfakes and how AI is going to continue to be a problem. And the young people in this country, they're thinking about these issues. They really, really are. They're thinking deeply about them. So at a moment in time where, newspapers are shutting down, the Washington Post just gutted much of its sports department, I am really optimistic, even with the challenges that are in front of us, about the future of media, based on what I've seen, not just in my own students, but when I go to conferences. That's a pretty long way of answering your question, but I'm happy to refine it.
Well, I think it's so critical. And I look around even at my boomer relatives and I see some of them in different parts of the spectrum, but you know the type that will say, "Oh, all of the mainstream," or they'll call it the lamestream media, is fake.
Yeah.
But then those same people will pay great attention to anonymous accounts on X or the latest Alex Jones theory, and I think, well, hold on, you're not applying any of the critical skills that you claim to be over here. And you're accepting at face value all of these completely unverified, unfiltered reports over here. And so helping our students understand that and navigate that, I think, is so important. It's never been more important. You also use comic books like Captain America and Black Panther to teach history, which I think is fantastic. How can teachers use unconventional media to make their own subjects more engaging?
Yeah, no, thank you. So in my younger years, I was super, super involved in this, and I still am, but I used to go to Comic Cons and present on using graphic novels and comics in the classroom. So yeah, I mean, I think any tool that a teacher can use to help engage the learner, they should use. I don't think really anything should be off limits if it can be used effectively to increase innate desire to master whatever material or content there is. But yeah, I mean, when I'm talking about the civil rights movement, I show an issue of Black Panther. It actually adorns my classroom wall. I forget the issue of it, where T'Challa, the Black Panther, is fighting a white supremacist group. And we talk about that. And we talk about, we also talk about the X-Men, right? Stan Lee's The X-Men, and how that was influenced by the very real civil rights movement that was going on at the time. And so students, I think it's important to leverage what students are interested in, or what's in pop culture right now, which is still, in this case, superheroes. Maybe less so these days, but superheroes, to make the learning more engaging and more relevant.
Teachers on Fire, if you're ready for more conversations like this one, make sure you subscribe to Teachers on Fire on whatever platform you might be tuning in on. David, you advocate for frequent low-stake assessments over rote memorization. How does this approach change the way your students study and retain complex information?
Yeah. So I don't believe that one assessment or one test should make or break someone's grade. We all have bad days. We all have days where, even if we know the content, I don't know, maybe mom is sick at home, maybe there's other things going on. So when I do give tests or assessments, I let students know this is not going to make or break you. But even beyond that point, I really am a firm believer in allowing students to not just revise for partial credit, but to revise for up to full credit. And these are ideas that, again, getting back to social media, I've learned to foster in my classroom through talks with authors like Mark Barnes and Rick Wormley. So I really want students to know, even if they don't do well on a test or a paper, meet with me, right? You can keep going until you get up to full credit within a given time frame. Because I really want students to know that I'm in their corner, and I don't much care as to whether or not they've had, I mean, I care if they've had one bad day, but I want them to know that ultimately what I care about is that they're learning, is that they're moving forward, and that they don't feel that a grade, and I don't like grades anyway, are somehow out to get them. I really want them to learn for learning's sake, not necessarily for the grade, but because I have to give a grade, because I'm obligated to, I allow students to work as hard as they'd like to get full credit.
What I hear there is process over product, and I think tying that back to our previous theme of AI, I think that's the way education has to move. We have to be looking at the day-by-day growth and journey of the student, not just what they are able to memorize in a 24-hour period, right?
Exactly.
You have your students improve their writing by sharing it online. How do authentic audiences change their approach to research and communication?
Yeah. So two ways, two facets I'll dive into here. So in the newsroom, I don't call it journalism. I call it the newsroom because the students are in charge. They are the most serious students I've seen when it comes to not wanting to use AI to do anything for them. In fact, the only thing they use AI for, and I'm okay with this because they check it after, is transcribing interviews, right?
Okay.
And I'm fine with that. But they won't touch it. And it's not just my students too. When I go to conferences as well, most students say, "Oh, we don't want to touch that." They really want to take ownership over their work. And if their work garners recognition, local, state, national, whatever the case may be, they want to own that. And I love that. I think that's terrific. In the history classroom, or in the more academic, not that journalism is not academic, but in the more traditional academic classroom, I sometimes ask students that if their work shines, how would they feel about posting it online? Not just on the Gator, but by maybe creating their own website or their own portfolio so that they can take greater ownership of that. And that's not just me trying to say, look, like this is a way to make sure that you don't use AI. Maybe it is incentive not to use it, but I want students to know that what they're doing isn't just for my eyes only, but it could be enlightening to whomever, right? And it could serve a purpose beyond just them earning a grade and going through the motions. And I think that goes a long way in cementing authentic learning.
That is music to my ears. I want to come back to that in terms of how you model that here in a moment as well. Just before we get there, I want to talk about some of the feedback the podcast has been getting in recent weeks. I want to highlight a few comments here. JP in Shenzhen says, interviews have been really fantastic lately. Thank you. Well, thank you, JP. Good to hear from you. I appreciate the encouraging words. Norien has been saying, I've been looking for videos about this and found out your video. You made it simplified and very effective. Thank you for that. And an older comment that I have not highlighted yet. Christy Fay says, I'm absolutely loving every podcast. I didn't want this one to end. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for the kind words. Really appreciate that as well. Okay, let me get us back up here. David, as we start to land the plane here, I want to highlight Medium. Let me see if I can put your page up on the screen. Sure. That's where you and I connected. And for those who are maybe not familiar with Medium as a platform, talk a little bit about what makes you enjoy writing in this space.
Yeah, so I really like Medium, and I think you were talking about this a bit earlier about engaging in sites or platforms that, in this case, are teacher-centric. And so when I post on to your page, for instance, I really like the feedback that I get because I know it's from teachers, it's from other educators. And the vast majority of stories I write are for educators, right? It's not for the Atlantic or Newsweek. It's for other people in the classroom or in the school setting to learn from, engage with, and even disagree with. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've had stories posted on major platforms and the feedback has been, it's not so much that people disagreed with me, it's just that the feedback has been cruel and unreasonable. And I want to foster disagreement, but I really want it to be civil and productive. And that's why I really enjoy posting on Medium. And I want people to disagree with me, but to do so in a productive way. So yeah, that's my answer in a nutshell.
Well, I love the platform. I love Substack as well, but Medium is a little bit of a different ecosystem, and I think it has its own value. And like you said, There are some nice, I don't want to say silos because that sort of has a negative connotation, but there are some segments that have been carved out that I think really make the platform valuable. It also pushes pieces, so
Yeah,
users and subscribers will get a daily digest, a weekly digest of pieces that relate to their interests. So once you do put up an article, and I'm sure you've discovered this about Medium, it can have sort of a reverberating effect. It can continue to attract views and comments and interaction long after the fact, which I think makes it valuable as well. So yes, thank
definitely.
you for continuing to write there. Thank you for submitting a few of your pieces to my publication. And if you're a teacher listening or watching today and you're thinking about writing and putting out some education writing in a space where you will have some engagement and some other educators joining you, consider joining us on Medium. We'd be happy to have you. Well, David, as we wrap up, what are the best ways, one more time, and we'll say them out
Sure.
loud for the audio-only listeners, what are the best ways for Teachers on Fire listening to you today to connect and hear more about your work?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our chat today. If folks want to reach out, yep, it's right on the screen there. Really, any way is great. If folks also want to email me, my private email is spin, like you're spitting a top, spin cutler, Cutler @gmail.com. But I also reply quite quickly also on X.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for sharing your time with the podcast today, David. I don't take that for granted from any educator to give up some of their sacred Saturdays. So I really appreciate your time and connecting with me today. It's been great to hear your thoughts and get to know you a little bit better. Teachers on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day listening to this episode. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from David Cutler sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.